But before I get to hoops, you stepped out of your basketball excellence and were all over the Bill Belichick story. First of all, it had to be fun just to kind of just step away from hoops and do stuff like that. So walk me through your involvement in all of that. That was cool. Good work.
Thank you. I appreciate you. No, it was certainly an experience. I can't say that I've ever covered a coaching search like that before, either at the college or the pro level, football or basketball. I mean, just in terms of waking up every day and thinking, okay, this is going to be the day. This is going to be the day. And then, okay, how is this going to fall apart today? And the thing that I think made it so unique, and obviously, reporting is coming in from all sorts of different places, is like, the people you would typically expect to be at the front of the pack in terms of driving that news, like the college newsbreakers, the Pete Thamels of the world. Mm-hmm. This is not a college guy. This is a pro guy. And so, like, trying to sift through all the information was fascinating. It was really cool for me getting to work with, like, our NFL staff and collaborating and, trying to figure out sort of, okay, is this real? Why does this guy want to do this? Why would North Carolina do this? How can they afford this? But certainly no. I mean, for North Carolina to do it, it's all chips into the center of the table. This is UNC betting big on football, betting that it's going to be the thing that subsidizes basically the rest of the athletic department moving forward. So, I'm as fascinated to see how it plays out as I was fascinated by the way that we actually arrived at this point.
So you and Diana Rossini on the same byline. I thought that was outstanding. Again, great work. All right, let's get to hoops, I guess the bread and butter. I'm not sure North Carolina can solve their problems based on the structure of their roster because I just don't see anything inside that leads me to believe that they're going to be a player. I think they might finish in the top 4 of the ACC. I'm not sure that's great. How do you read where the Tar Heels are? Because they've got some dynamite players on the wing.
They do. The problem is that, I would make the argument that all of North Carolina's best players are 6'4" and shorter. Mm-hmm. And that really is the crux of the matter. And it's not just the lack of bigs. And again, this is a point that has been, it's the horse isn't just dead. The horse has been beaten plenty at this point. Like, the big thing is a fatal flaw. It inherently caps North Carolina's ceiling. Like, this is not going to be a national championship team because it does not have the size, the rebounding, the rim protection, et cetera, in the inside, clearly. To me, the issue is as much the rest of the team. You do have these dynamite players on the wing, but, like, R.J. Davis is struggling right now.
Yeah.
He is not shooting nearly the way that he has, not just last year, but really the last 2 or 3 years. Elliot Cadeau has not really made those strides as an offensive player to where defenses have to respect him. And again, those guys defensively, the effort hasn't been bad throughout the year. But at the end of the day, no matter if you play good defense for 23 seconds on the shot clock, when you have someone rising up against you who's taller than you, you can only contest the shot so much. So the defense is an issue because of the bigs, of course, but it is also an issue just because you're playing regularly 3, sometimes even 4 players who are like 6'4" and shorter. So, I'm not saying that I don't think North Carolina can't be a tournament team. I think it's possible. I do not think it's guaranteed. But certainly this is a team that just has an inherent cap on what it can become because of the way the roster was built.
Brendan Marks is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. And going into the season, I kept saying, not worried, not worried. You're right about R.J. Davis. He has not shot the ball. He's under 30% from three-point range. Now, it's rising a little bit. It's like 27.5% now as opposed to 24.5% a week and a half ago. So maybe he's coming out of it. But, man, he had some good looks last night. None of them went down. I know he wasn't over, but it seemed like it. And Elliot Cadeau, I think the bigger problem with him is that he's frustrated, and I think when he plays frustrated, he's not playing at his best. I thought he was a much more calm player a year ago, and we haven't seen that Elliot Cadeau. We have seen great Ian Jackson. I love the player. I love when Seth Trimble is healthy. I love him too. So there are pieces, but man, for North Carolina to not be a great offensive rebounding team, I just don't know what I'm watching. It's a completely
Yeah.
different. And I've never seen a UNC team not be great on the offensive glass.
This is, and there's a great reason for that. This is the worst offensive rebounding team that North Carolina has had since, drumroll please, it's since 01-02, the disaster year, the worst year in modern history. And again, anytime that you're being mentioned in the same category as that year, for whatever reason, it's not a good situation. So, I mean, again, we don't need to beat the dead horse, but this is the first time North Carolina is not grabbing at least a third of its misses, or at least 30% of its misses in well over 20 years at this point. So if it seems like it's been forever since North Carolina has struggled this much on the glass, that's because it has been forever.
Yeah, 28% according to the stats that I'm looking at here, 245th in the country. Brendan Marks is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I wish it was going to get better. Here's the thing. I do think North Carolina, and I thought last night's game, or yesterday afternoon, I think it was afternoon. I don't even know. I'm not even sure what day today is, Brendan. To me, it looked like a game we would see Wednesday at noon at the ACC tournament, an 8-9 ACC tournament game, except that one of those teams, I would wager today, is going to get a double bye in the ACC. There's just not a lot of time to rebuild your resume after what has happened in the non-conference for UNC. That win over UCLA is going to, and maybe even the win over Dayton, they're going to do a lot of heavy lifting. If North Carolina's overall record looks good, those two wins might get UNC into the NCAA tournament, but they probably need to win, what would you say, 14 conference games?
I would probably say more than that. I think you're talking about 15 or 16. And you have to win the right ones, too. I mean, if this team doesn't beat Duke, at least in one of the two matchups, obviously they're going to get Clemson, they're going to get Pittsburgh. Like those SMU even next week. I mean, that's a huge game. Like, you have to win those. And again, like, looking at the ACC at large right now, you've got
good.
Duke. You feel good. Duke is going to compile its way to a number one seed. I think talent-wise, Duke is good enough to be a one seed, but they're just going to stack wins against bad teams until their record gets them a one seed. I feel good about Clemson. I feel good about Pitt. I think that both of those teams have proven they are generally consistent enough to be tournament caliber teams. And Pitt's doing it with a lot of injuries right now. The fact they were able to win without, some of their better players.
Yeah.
Again, Damian Dunn is still hurt. Like, I really like Pitt, actually. After that, there is not a single team, North Carolina included, that I feel, better than 50% about their NCAA tournament chances. I mean, I would put North Carolina, Louisville, Wake Forest, and SMU sort of in that next tier of teams that are competing. But, I think, 6 of the 10 worst high major teams in the entire country in terms of the net, in terms of Ken Palm rankings, 6 of the 10 worst are from the ACC. So, like, if you're one of those teams, if you're a North Carolina and you stumble and you lose to a Boston College on a random day, you lose to a Virginia Tech one day, you're cooked. I mean, that was Louisville a couple of years ago. Now there are multiple of those pitfalls. So, outside of those 3 that I just mentioned, Duke, Clemson, and Pittsburgh, I think the ACC gets at least 3 teams in. I think it probably gets a 4th to Dayton, and barring an NC State-esque run by another team, we could be talking about another historic low for the ACC in terms of berths this season. Yeah,
you and I are on the same page with that. Duke did pick up a quality quad 4 win over Virginia Tech on New Year's Eve. That's what it is. There are four conference games that somebody is going to play where it's a quad 4 opportunity for a home team. That is unbelievable that you could play conference games that are quad 4 opportunities. It's staggering. The SEC, as the home team, you have 8 different opponents that will get you a quad 1 win. When you're at home, when the threshold is much higher, my gosh, it has been crazy. Let me ask you real quick about the Blue Devils. Con Knippel hasn't really gotten going. He's had some good moments, and I think his all-around game is pretty good. But I think Isaiah Evans at times has saved them. But what has been the biggest difference, you think, to Duke in their turnaround from maybe losing some of those bigger games? I love the Auburn game, man. I could watch that 1,000 times in a row. But what do you think the difference has been for the Blue Devils?
I think the best thing about this team, and I think like when John Shire built this roster, he did it with this goal in mind, and it has come to fruition realistically even quicker than I might have expected. The role definition here is just so good. It's so good. Everyone understands exactly what they're there to do. Nobody's trying to go beyond their capabilities except for maybe the occasional Isaiah Evans heat check three. But listen, like Cooper Flagg is the sun. Everything orbits around him. And you've gotten a group full of grown men to buy into, hey, this 17, 18-year-old is our best player, and everything we do needs to be in support of him. Again, we go back to like March and April when you see 4-star guys and 5-star guys leaving, and it's like, oh, my God, what is happening at Duke? This is what was happening. John Shire's trying to find guys who would buy into that philosophy, and this group has. I mean, again, you mentioned Knipple hasn't been, maybe shooting it as well as he was early in the year, but he's still doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Georgia Tech game, I think he had like 5 or 6 assists in that game. He's always good for a couple of rebounds. Defensively, he's still able to poke it away once or twice. Relatively speaking, he's a low foul guy. Obviously makes all the hustle plays in terms of diving on the floor, doing those sorts of things. But like everybody plays their role. I mean, Tyrese Proctor has really come on as a shooter this year, and I think as a floor general overall. Kaman Malawak continues to get better. Sion James is a grown man. I really like him sort of sliding into this role in the starting lineup. We know how good Malik Brown can be. He was central to Duke beating Auburn in that game and the deflections and his work on Janai Broome. Like, everybody really plays their role, and Evans' emergence just gives John Shire one more tool in his toolbox. Maybe like he's probably the closest thing Duke has to a break glass in case of emergency guy. So the role definition at Duke is just really strong right now. They are getting in reps against not great teams right now. The best game left on Duke's schedule is when they play Illinois in Madison Square Garden at the end of February.
Yeah, you're right.
It's hilarious. But this is a team that understands what is asked of it, what everybody is supposed to do. They know their jobs. They don't make a fuss. Compared to last year, if I asked, if you went in the Duke locker room in March of last year and you asked everybody on that team who's the best player, you might have gotten 3 or 4 different answers. You go in there right now, the pecking order is clear, and it shows in the way that Duke plays.
Brendan Marks from The Athletic, at Brendan R. Marks on Twitter. Happy New Year, my friend. I will talk to you again soon. Appreciate your time.
You will. Happy New Year. I appreciate you having me.